We've got Mike DeCourcy to brighten things for us. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Jim. How are you?
I cannot complain. We've got Kevin Brockway here, and all you can do is look at the rain and say, I got a lot of stuff to do today anyway, so there's no reason to go out.
I was telling Jim before about because I'm staying in that Fairfield Inn, that Marriott that overlooks the cemetery, which is kind of apropos for where Indiana is right now.
Oh no!
Wow, it's just all you just walked into a morbid. We were talking about mortuaries before in the break, so.
Yeah,
West Lafayette looked like a mortuary school. Just kidding, though. But we got to brighten things up for Mike. But plenty of other good things going on. Not good last night for Indiana, as we talked. A game that again they had within their grasp, and they just don't do the things to win the game in pure and simple language.
Yeah, I mean, if they'd held their defensive integrity on the last Ohio State possession. They would at least have been able to challenge Liddell's shot, and instead everybody went for the basketball. I mean, literally everybody defending the lane at that point went for the basketball up at the free throw line. It made it an easy pass and an opportunity for Liddell to dunk. And I mean, that was an enormous play that worked out for the Buckeyes. And IU just. Without having Rob Finney, they are so limited at point guard. It's not just Xavier Johnson's what he is not great at. It's just that he has to play so many minutes, and it's clear that it's affected his ability to perform.
Without question, and they just I don't know. You can't say that they wore out, but. They had the thing that killed me is their last two possessions. They were just empty and they weren't good possessions. And if they score either time that it almost puts the game away because they were already up and they just have their last two possessions are completely empty, playing very where's the word I'm looking for? Very loosely, but cavalier. It was very cavalier. They weren't playing with, we've got this game in our hands. Let's seal it here. It was like it's another play. And to me, I'm tired of saying the team doesn't know how to win. It's more than that. That's bull. You learn how to win when you're growing up. Everybody knows how to win. It's playing smartly. Well, but playing smartly and playing smartly together. That's what I don't think they do. They don't. The IQ of this team, I hate to challenge that, but it's really, I wonder about it. And the cohesiveness is absolutely not there.
Well, I thought one of the problems that they had last night was that they struggled against a very good defensive team to get high quality shots. And they were fortunate that Tamar Bates was as terrific as he was in crunch time. He made difficult shots to get them the lead, to get them to extend the lead to where not to a huge lead, but to where it seemed like they might be able to get out of there. And then when it came time to do it again, you've already asked for more than was warranted a couple of times, and it was answered positively. You're probably not going to get that to happen again. You needed to get something of a better quality, and they were unable to do that. I go back to the fact that if you look at, there are two factors I think more than anything that contribute to their current streak, and one of them is that a lot of teams in college basketball would lose most or all of the games that the Hoosiers are losing because of the challenge of them. Not many teams. Until Saturday when Iowa State went into Columbus and won, literally no one had done that this year. So there's that, the challenge on the schedule, IU schedule being a bit backloaded. And then there's the fact that you don't have Rob Finney. And Indiana's best basketball this season has been played when they had both point guards available and both contributing at a high level. When they had both of them, it tempers some of the things at which Xavier is not good at and emphasizes those he is, because he's not dependent on to be the calming leader of the offense. He's more of a dynamic presence then. And Finney is someone, if you watched last night, Ohio State went under every screen that was set for Xavier Johnson on the perimeter. I mean, like, you see guys slide under screens and try to get back into the play quickly because they don't want the opponent to get off the shot, but they also don't want the roll man to get released because that's their real fear. Ohio State was going so far under the screens, they were practically in Pittsburgh by the time they got, I mean, they were begging Xavier Johnson to take that shot, and he chose, probably wisely, not to, but it made it so much easier in certain circumstances for the Buckeyes to defend IU.
Mike, here's another area where I think they really miss Finney is, you look at the last few games, Johnny Davis, Branham, putting him in the bind, his perimeter defense. You could sick him on those guys, maybe frustrate them a little bit, or get, at least he's got that ability that Parker Stewart doesn't have. Because if you look at that last defensive possession, it started with that fear of Branham and so many guys switching on him that sprung Liddell 3. And if you have a perimeter guy, and I think that's what they're really missing, is that kind of perimeter defender that can harass or shut down a Johnny Davis, shut down a Branham, which shut up that that last basket. And Branham also got fouled, made 2 free throws as well.
Yeah, and I think that's another area also to reinforce your point, where they missed Trey Galloway last night, because he might have been able to take some of those possessions. Maybe not all of them would be ideal, but some of them, to give them a better presence than they're getting. We talked before about whether they're better with 2 shooting wings or whether Galloway starting. It limits your offensive ability a little bit, but it provides so much in terms of ball movement and quickness on the perimeter. And him not being available means that you have no choice but to play with the 2 relatively stationary wings. And that affected them in particular with Branham, who's really developing into a great college guard.
The freshman of the year in the Big Ten, or is McGowan's?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Is Branham the freshman of the year in the Big Ten, or McGowan's?
Yeah, for me, it would be either Chucky Hepburn or Branham. I'm not super big on players on a 1-win team getting individual awards. No slight to Trey, but it's easier. There was a comment one of my friends in coaching made once. Somebody has to score the points because you're not going to shut anybody out. And Trey is doing the best he can, but it's not as hard to do what he's doing as it is to do. Obviously, I mean, if you saw last night's game, I mean, Branham, once Ohio State let the lead go, I mean, Branham is in a crucible on every possession because he has to make something happen. Jamari Wheeler is a good, solid college point guard, but he's not dynamic offensively. He's a defender first and a one-pass point guard. Gets the ball out of his hands, and then it belongs to everybody else until it comes back to him. And if he's open, he should shoot it more than he does, but he can make that shot. But he's not a facilitator. He's not a creator. So it has to be Branham. And you saw last night, what he was able to do in those circumstances. He was huge in that victory.
He killed Indiana, and Andy says that leaving Stewart on Branham was not smart, in essence. But I don't know. They were so shorthanded. Who else are you going to put on him? That was the problem. Miller Kopp can't guard him. Xavier had his hands full, and he did a hell of a job to stay out of foul trouble with what his record has been so far this season. So I don't know who else they could have put on him, to be honest with you, without Trey Galloway available. But he certainly killed Indiana, and they could not get a stop on him, especially when they needed to. And that was a critical point of the game. And then follow up on what you were saying, Indiana not having they just don't have a shooter. They've got some people they thought were going to be shooters, but they don't have a guy who, when they need a bucket, that they can say he will get us a bucket. Trace Jackson sometimes, but that's not every time, or a shooter. Like, we know that he'll get us a score. They don't have that guy.
I would say that it should be Trace, but I'm gonna say that because of how the perimeter makes it easier to guard IU, that it's not Trace's fault. Again, you don't have to worry. Miller and Parker are the kinds of players that opposing coaches say, if he makes 2, I'll worry about it, and if he makes 3, I'll panic. But they don't worry about him. They're going to stay in the play. But if it's do I dig on one of the best low post scorers in college basketball, Trace Jackson Davis, or do I stay pinned to Miller, Copper, Parker, Stewart? They say, oh, let's go. Let's get in there. We don't have to worry that much about these guys burying us. And so they do. And it's made it really hard for Trace. He's not been able to be productive at the level that he's capable of. He's one of the best players in the Big Ten, but the circumstance is not allowing him to show that. And that's again, some of that's opposition driven, some of it's injury driven on his own team, and some of it's the limitations of the players who are available.
Last night, he was only 3 of 9, but worse, he was 7 of 13 at the free throw line. Kevin.
Yeah, and I was going to point that out, left some points out there. Also, I like when he's active on the offensive boards. He did a little of that in the first half. Not quite as much in the second half that you'd want to see. But I agree in terms of, he's in a bind, like you said. And they were trying to get the ball to him, but, Race had a bad post-entry pass, and that's when it all went downhill coming out of that timeout. And you only bleed 12 seconds off the shot clock there.
Exactly. Situationally, they're a team because of the way they're constructed. Their execution has to be at a high level on almost every trip. I mean, they can't afford to execute badly because you're not overwhelmingly tall. You don't have those proficient shooters. You're not built to be an elite defensive team. So your execution has to be near perfect, and it hasn't been.
And in his time of needing somebody else to step up, they haven't had that, whether it's been Anthony Leal, who has had a couple of opportunities here, whether it's been Northwestern or last night. And, he misses his shot, but he gets to go to the free throw line, and he misses 2 free throws, critical for Indiana. Only had 3 guys go to the line. He was one of them, known as a shooter, and misses both. That really hurt because I think that was at the end of the first half too, I believe. And then Geronimo played only 3 minutes, so he's not in there. Tamar Bates plays 25 minutes. He was 3 of 11. He scored 7 points, 1 of 4 behind the line, and 5 rebounds. But they're just not getting anything from the bench either right now.
True, but they're going deeper into the bench than they would want in terms of the personnel they're pulling off.
They didn't have Trey Galloway.
If Rob and Trey were available, those are your first 2 guys off the bench.
Absolutely.
Or you're playing 2 points and Parker's your first guy off the bench. That makes you a different team. I remember in January, like every time I turned on IU, they're playing at Assembly Hall, and you start to get the impression that at some point they're going to pay for this. That the schedule was so backloaded. And I know why that's done. I mean, they're a big brand, and if they're a high quality team, they are going to draw huge audiences. And so that's why the biggest games are at the end. It's not unique to Indiana. It's like that for Duke. It's like that for Gonzaga this weekend. They go to San Francisco, to St. Mary's. Probably the 2 toughest games on their schedule, held to the end because they want to put Gonzaga in some jeopardy, because they're going to have to go there eventually, and they want to send them there when more people are watching. So that's been IU's burden, is that their brand has been ahead of the team for at least a dozen years, if not longer. And so they get that treatment like okay, we want to see you in a big game. Yeah, but we're not that good yet. And so this is going to be really hard for us.
I'm trying to find your bracket here at college CBB on Fox at CBB on
Right.
Fox. Are they on the first 4 out right now? Indiana.
Today's bracket doesn't release until this afternoon, but I can say that the results of the last 2 weeks have not been positive for the Hoosiers.
The good thing is,
19 wins. Does that get them in? They win the next 3.
I hadn't viewed it that way, but let me give it a look and see where that puts them. Right now, they are at 16-10. So
19-11 at the end of the regular season.
Yeah,
I've always said that I didn't expect them to win that game last night, and it would be great. But if they come home and they beat Maryland, they go to Minnesota, they beat them, they come back home and beat a Rutgers team that has been playing well, that gives them 19 wins. They're going to go to Purdue and lose that game. But 19 and what that would make them 19-12. Do they have to win a game 19-11? Does that get them in, or do they have to win?
It would depend on who it was against. If they did that, what you just said, they're probably back inside the first 4 at minimum. And because it would really help them to beat Rutgers, because Rutgers is hanging around 11-12 for most people now. So if you take them out, you're taking out the competition. Those games are really important. It's like in hockey, it's a 4-point game, or in soccer, it's a 6-point game, because you're taking away from your opposition and giving to yourself. So that's what this is. This is like a 6-point game in soccer, where you're playing that you're 1-2 in a league and you're trying to get ahead of the first place team. Well, you take away the 3 points they would get if they beat you, and you add to your total, so it's considered a 6-point game. And that's what this is for IU if they win these next 2. If they don't beat Minnesota and Maryland, then their only way back in is to beat Purdue, or to go to Indy and get a couple of wins against teams that are in the field. They cannot afford to lose these next 2 under any circumstance. And then it comes down to Rutgers, and again, they need that game. I'd say to feel good going into Indy, that you can't hurt yourself much, they have to win the next 3.